Welcome in to another episode of the Barnes on Bama podcast. I'm your host, Owen Barnes, and we had an up and down week of Alabama sports. So we're going to discuss everything that happened, the Purdue basketball game that happened up in Indiana, the Mercer game that happened here in Tuscaloosa, and then we're going to recap the Illinois game that's going to be happening in Birmingham. Just a little bit of programming, just so that everyone's aware. If you're watching this episode, obviously this comes out on Monday morning ahead of the Illinois game that's going to be happening on a Wednesday evening. My plan is to record on Thursday to come out Friday recapping the Illinois game and previewing the Oklahoma game that's going to be happening in Norman. And also just a heads up, sorry for the delay on everything. If you were interested in why this wasn't coming out Sunday night instead of Monday, I'm taking care of my girlfriend who had ACL surgery. So, schedule's been a little weird, but, everything is all good. We are on the road to recovery and just wanted to make sure everyone was aware. The schedule is going to continue as normal. So again, just as a heads up, the video will be recorded on Thursday to come out on Friday for the preview of Oklahoma. So be on the lookout for that. Let's hop right into the Purdue game. So this Purdue game, I predicted Alabama was going to win, and I thought in large part that was going to be because I thought that Alabama had success and was going to have success from an athleticism standpoint, and I thought that Alabama was just the better team. And for the most part, I don't think that I was wrong. But I do think that Purdue had some things that Alabama was just not ready for. And in large part, this was Trey Kaufman-Renn. In the write-up that I did, I undersold him a bit. The thread that I put out on Twitter, I undersold his ability. And part of it was because of what we had seen last season. And Nate even mentioned this, right? They were not expecting somebody that was going to dominate them in the post when they didn't have Cliff. And Trey did. Kaufman-Renn absolutely dominated this game for Purdue and was a mismatch for anybody not named Cliff Amore for Alabama. He ended up with 26 points on 24 shots. The only thing he was bad at in the game was free throws. He just was a very elite scorer down low. He drew 5 fouls. He had 4 assists. He just kind of did it all. And the only person that really could match up with him was Cliff Amore. And Cliff in this game, to his credit, blocked 4 shots, got 7 rebounds. He ended up getting 4 fouls, right? And those 4 fouls ended up being a major issue in this game because when Cliff was not on the floor, Alabama just did not have an answer for Kaufman-Renn. And it ended up being a large issue in this game. I was under the assumption partially due to what we saw last season and the depth that we have at that position that center depth and forward depth was not going to be a problem. But Grant Nelson really could not match up to Kaufman-Renn in this game. Not to say Grant couldn't in the future because I know that he held his own against Armando Bacot in the Elite 8, Sweet 16 game. But in this game, he just was not the player that he needed to be against Kaufman-Renn, at least from a defensive perspective. Aiden Sherrill was a non-factor. He only played 2 minutes in this game. And Jaron Stevenson, and we'll talk about him here in a minute, Jaron Stevenson almost is unplayable currently. Currently, Nate Oates is trying to play him at the 3, and I don't know if it's partially because they think his skill set is there, because they like playing the taller lineup, they like his defensive ability, or what, but his inability to make a shot makes him almost unplayable currently. It's a situation where, if he's making the open shot, then obviously you can play him, but currently this season he doesn't have a single 3 made. And it's very clear, and it's starting to get to a point where people are just going to leave him open. It's getting that bad, right? So that's the big problem with the lineup that Alabama's been rolling out there. And that really, those 4 guys, the only one being able to really slow down Kaufman-Renn being Cliff Amore was a big problem in this game. Alabama, by and large, didn't do terrible at stopping the rest of the guys. Fletcher Loyer did not play great in the first matchup with Alabama last season, and we talked about that. Fletcher Loyer played much better in this game. He hit some really big shots, including a three. That was a really nice play drawn up to end the half. And I thought that he really made shots that, when they mattered, he made the big shots. Braden Smith was what we expected, but he wasn't super efficient, right? Alabama honestly played Braden Smith about as well as you could hope. He was 6 of 18 from 2, 0 of 4 from 3. He got 6 rebounds. He got 10 assists, but that's really who Braden Smith is. He did a really good job facilitating for the rest of the team, but he was very inefficient in the shots he took. So that was something that Alabama at least did a good job at defending him. He made some tough shots, but I thought that, you would, if you give me that stat line from Braden Smith coming into this game, I would have completely taken it. The problem where Alabama, had is we really just underestimated a couple of guys, and Nate mentioned it in the postgame. We talked about Kaufman-Wren, Alabama underestimating his ability to just, kind of take guys one-on-one. Nate was talking about not having planned to need to double the post. And in this case, we probably needed to. But the other guy that Alabama completely underestimated was C.J. Cox. And he's a freshman. And coming out, he's a bit of a shooter, but you don't think that he's going to be the guy that can just light you on fire. And he did. Alabama gets up 6 in this game in the second half. And then Purdue proceeds to go on a 13-0 run to go up 7. And in large part, that was due to C.J. Cox hitting 3 threes in a row. And he was 3 of 3 from deep. And that, just stretch run right there was a huge problem for Alabama. Obviously, when you're in an opposing arena, momentum is a massive deal. And it really felt like if Alabama could make a shot when it was up at 6, Alabama had the chance to kind of bust the game open and kind of put Purdue at arm's length because they were having success with Kaufman-Wren, but Alabama finally had figured out the three-point shot. In the first half, Alabama only shoots 1 of 9, but in the second half, they're 8 of 20. And earlier in that half, they were actually even a little better than that. And it really felt like Alabama was going to have Purdue at arm's length. And then Cox hit those big 3 threes, and Purdue's all of a sudden up. There's a questionable lack of timeout from Nate Oates. We've talked a lot about that with Nate Oates not wanting to take timeouts. In my opinion, he took it a shot too late. If he takes it when they're down 4, I think it makes a much bigger deal. But then they hit another shot and we go down 7, and by that point, the crowd's just completely into it. And I understand Nate's point of, wanting to let the team get out of it themselves and all different things. But at that point in the momentum of this game, I think you had to take the timeout. If this was at home, I think you could live with them hitting the shot because your crowd potentially could get you, will you back into it. But on the road, in my opinion, you have to take the timeout there. So in my opinion, I think this game says a lot about the lack of just offense that Alabama was able to create at moments. You didn't get the offense that you wanted out of Grant Nelson or out of Mark Sears. Grant Nelson wasn't bad in this game. Obviously, he has a double-double, but wasn't absolutely the best. Mark Sears was very inefficient, 1 of 6 from 3, 5 of 15 from the field. He has 15 points, but again, it was a very inefficient 15 points. Really, the bright spot in this game from Alabama is LeBaron Philon, and we've talked a lot about him, but Philon was a huge bright spot in this game. At moments, it really felt like he was the only guy on Alabama that could do what he wanted to do and could create success for himself. Driving to the basket, hitting threes. That on the broadcast they were talking about how he wasn't a great three-point shooter. So far that season, he goes 3 of 4. So you'll absolutely love to see that. And I think that he's really the bright spot in this game for Alabama. Obviously, Cliff was the other bright spot from a defensive perspective. And then for me, the last person, and he didn't get enough minutes in my opinion, is Mo D. Modi ends up having just over 9 minutes in this game, but in those 9 minutes, he ends up drawing 4 fouls. He got 3 rebounds. He hit all 4 free throws. He blocked a shot. I just personally think that he has to get more minutes than 9. The way he impacts the game when he's in is absolutely massive. And I think that he has to, be around the 15-minute mark every game, no matter what's going on, because of his ability to impact on the defensive end, rebound, and be physical with the ball. Again, like I said, he draws 4 fouls when he's in. And he, other than Cliff, was the only one to even have a 0 plus minus, right? Modi has a 0 plus minus. Cliff has a positive plus minus at plus 11. Everyone else on the team has a negative plus minus, with the worst two being Jaren and Aiden Holloway. I don't think Aiden Holloway played terribly in this game. He goes 1 of 4 from deep. Would have liked to have seen him hit an extra one of those or two, because some of those were open, but he really finished decently well around the rim. He had 2 assists. He did draw 2 fouls. I didn't dislike how Aiden played in this game, but, obviously the plus-minus number looks pretty bad. So, obviously those can be deceiving, but that's what I look at, right? In my opinion, what this game tells you is Alabama very sorely needs Chris Youngblood. They need somebody that can really fill in the 3. In my opinion, Alabama is going to have to start playing a lineup of Mark Sears, LeBaron Philon, Darion Reed, Grant Nelson, and then Cliff Omori. That needs to be your starting lineup for now. And then as soon as Chris Youngblood comes out, you swap out Darion Reed for Chris Youngblood. I think that Latrell Wrightsell can come off the bench currently, but I think that the two-way style of LeBaron Philon and what he gives you currently, he has to start. He's giving you just too much on the offense and defensive ends to not start for the rest of the season, at least for the foreseeable future. And, you can readdress as needed. But currently, I think LeBaron Philon has to start. So that's what I would look at moving forward. We'll talk about the Illinois game coming up and, how we stack up with Illinois. But my starting lineup for that game, like I said, is Mark Sears, LeBaron Philon, Darion Reed, Grant Nelson, Cliff Omori. The Jaren Stevenson experiment at the 3, in my opinion, needs to go away. And when he gets a little bit more confident and is hitting more shots, if you want to go back to running him at the 3 until Chris Youngblood comes back, sure. But in my opinion, the experiment has failed, and we need to kind of go away from it because currently it's been a major problem, and he's a liability out there currently. So that's what happened in this game. Like I said, we'll address the Illinois game here coming up, but that is what happened in the Purdue game. Alabama loses this game, and, we move on to the next game. It's okay that we lost this game. It's not going to hurt any of our chances to be a top seed, to advance in the tournament, to win the SEC, to win the Thanksgiving tournament. None of those things are out of you for losing this game, but, you have your work cut out ahead of you. So let's move over to the Mercer game, and we're going to talk about Alabama's massive win over Mercer by a score of 52-7. And the big thing that we want to talk about in this game, and what I talked about coming into this game, is I was concerned that Alabama was going to not take Mercer as seriously as they needed to, and that was the big thing, right? If you heard any of my preview was less about what Mercer can do and more about, is Alabama going to give this game the seriousness that it deserves? Because Alabama was clearly the better team. Alabama clearly should win this game by a substantial margin. I think I picked it at like 45-7. So this game is very similar to what I expected. But, is Alabama going to take them serious? Because Mercer had created 27 turnovers. They were 9-1 in the FCS. And at the end of the day, a really good FCS team is no worse than a lower-level FBS team. And if Alabama did not play to their capability, they could lose the game. But very quickly, Alabama showed that they were not taking Mercer lightly, that they were taking this game as seriously as it deserved, and Alabama looked phenomenal. Jalen Milroe goes 11 of 16 for 186 and 2 TDs. He really probably should have had another long TD. In this game, Caleb Odom ends up dropping a deep ball that, in my opinion, probably should have been a catch, should have been a touchdown. Jalen Milroe played great in this game. He also has 6 rushes for 43 yards. So Jalen Milroe doing what Jalen Milroe does, 2 TDs through the air, 1 on the ground. Didn't have to use his legs quite as much as we've seen in some previous games, but definitely, created with his legs a decent bit. Ty Simpson also comes into this game and has some success as well. Ty Simpson has a just phenomenal escape that was just a Houdini-like play. Honestly, really felt like a Johnny Manziel play against Alabama when he threw it up to Mike Evans. Ty Simpson escapes the sack, ends up throwing it up to Cuevas. Cuevas gets tackled on the 1-yard line, and then Alabama punches it in. But it really felt like one of the old Johnny plays where he threw it up to Mike Evans, after he just barely escapes the sack. But the big thing is that Alabama, again, took this game as seriously as it deserved and executed in all facets of the game. The other one was Austin Mack. Austin Mack had a really awesome throw to Rico Scott. Really put it exactly where it needed to be. That was the big thing in this game. If you notice, is that Alabama played actually 5 quarterbacks. When the 5th quarterback came in to take the knee at the very end of the game, I actually had to look him up on the roster. He was currently our scout team quarterback on the roster, and our players were kind of asked about it after the game, what it was like to get the scout teamers in for the very end, and they were like, it was super cool, them getting some level of recognition, them being able to see the field in an actual game, even if it's just to kneel it out, but them getting a snap of real game experience was kind of cool. So in general, I thought that Alabama played this game about as well as you could have asked. Mercer, to their credit, was not bad. There were some moments that Mercer had that really were pretty good. Their quarterback, Whit Neubauer, there was a lot on the broadcast about him being an Alabama football fan growing up. He had the Alabama bedspread, and it was cool seeing his parents, watch him compete in Bryant-Denny Stadium. He had a really cool throw that was an absolute phenomenal catch by Kendall Harris, and Harris was just absolutely incredible with this catch. It was a one-handed catch in the end zone. Just, kind of good defense, but better offense beats good defense kind of situation. And again, props to them. Mercer tried to put up as much of a fight as they could, but Alabama's defense, causes 3 turnovers and really imposes their will in this game. Alabama, again, I looked at this as, is Alabama going to take this game seriously? You just won a big game in Death Valley. Now, are you going to take this game with the seriousness it deserves? And the answer was yes, which is awesome to see. Then with some help, Alabama actually only needs Missouri to beat Mississippi State, or I guess to win another game, but the best chance for that is Mississippi State this coming up week. And if Missouri wins one more game, then Alabama actually will be in the SEC championship, most likely against the winner of Texas A&M. So that's actually what is ahead of us. Alabama, even with the losses this season, has a very good chance to make the SEC championship game. In my opinion, as long as they win out, they're going to be in the college football playoff. So all of the things at which they look to achieve this season are fully ahead of them. It was awesome to see all these things. Another massive game for Ryan Williams. He has a receiving touchdown as well as a rushing touchdown. It was cool to see Alabama get Robbie Oots into this game. Mostly known as our H-back / tight end, mostly a blocking guy. Alabama gets him a touchdown through the air, as well as, just missed him on another deep ball through the air that would have been a second touchdown. It was cool. Like I said, Alabama really was using all facets of the offense as well as the defense. Kane Womack's defense forces 3 turnovers. Alabama played really to perfection. It was exactly what you wanted to see out of Alabama in this game. There were a couple of penalties, nothing major. Definitely, could be slightly cleaner. Alabama gets 6 penalties for 60 yards. Again, you don't love to see 60 yards of penalties, but it's not the end of the world. And again, Alabama just completely imposes their will, does what they should do to a team of this caliber, and wins this game comfortably 52-7. So, like I said, in my opinion, this was exactly what you wanted to see out of Alabama coming off of a big LSU win. So this is perfect moving forward, and we will look ahead to the Oklahoma game and the episode that's going to come out on Friday. Finally, we are going to break down the Illinois game and talk through what I think is going to happen for the Alabama-Illinois game that's going to be happening in Birmingham. So as I mentioned, Alabama is going to be playing Illinois in Birmingham, and this is the game that Alabama plays in Birmingham each season, the Night-Nittany Classic there in Birmingham. And they do a really good job putting on this event each year. And I think this was supposed to be Arizona. For those of you unaware, this was supposed to be Arizona with the return trip from last season. Arizona backs out. Alabama fills them with Illinois. And I think that Illinois is going to be a really good test for Alabama. Illinois has some guys on their team which Alabama has faced before. For example, Kylan Boswell that was on that Arizona team that Alabama faced last season. They also have some incoming guys with Will Riley and Ivisic, some freshmen that are playing some big minutes, as well as Kasparas. I'm not going to pretend to pronounce his last name. Either way, they've got some freshmen that are contributing big minutes for them. I think this will be a very good game. From an Alabama perspective, Alabama has seen what they need to work on as it relates to they just played Purdue on the road, and they've had a little bit of a step up in competition from that first UNC Asheville game. The McNeese State and Arkansas State games gave us a little bit to work on. Then the Purdue game gave us even more to work on. The difference is Illinois has really not played a great schedule. They played Eastern Illinois, which is one of the bottom 50 teams in the country. Southern Illinois, UE, which is in the Ohio Valley, again, another bottom half of Division I, and then Oakland, which KenPom currently has around 200. For reference, all three of those teams are worse than UNC Asheville from a KenPom perspective, right? I know KenPom is not viable this early in the year, but that just gives you an idea about the level of competition which Illinois has played. Now, they have won all three of those games. That Oakland game was only actually by 12 points, so it was not a great win, but it was a win nonetheless. But this is going to be a massive step up in competition for Illinois, right? So where Alabama has learned a little bit about themselves from the games which we've played, Illinois is just going to be learning about themselves this first game. So you need to take some of the stats with a grain of salt as it relates to, maybe 3-point percentages and certain things, because when you're playing lower level competition, it's not always indicative on what you're going to get as it relates to conference play and the tougher teams on your schedule. But we'll look at their stats and kind of go through what really stands out to me. The biggest thing that stands out to me when you look at Illinois currently is, as of this moment, they are second in the country in 3-point attempts as it relates to field goal attempts. About 57% of their total field goal attempts are 3-point attempts. So this very much could be a game in which Illinois is going to shoot a ton of threes. On the flip side, Illinois, and I looked back over the last few years, Brad Underwood's Illinois teams have been near tops of the country at running opposing teams off the 3-point line. So the game plan from my standpoint of what Illinois is going to try to do looks very simple. Illinois is going to try to run Alabama off the 3-point line while taking the 3-pointers themselves, right? They are going to try to run people off the 3-point line and funnel them into their 7-1 center, Ivisic. In my opinion, I think Alabama is going to try to get this pace up. Illinois is a team that does play with a bit of pace. They're not a super fast-paced team by any stretch of the imagination, but they're typically top 100, top 75 in pace. So this is a game which I would expect that Alabama is going to have some success at bumping up the pace in this one. I think that Alabama can have some success if they get the right matchups, right? I think that Alabama can have some success down low as it relates to the fact that they're going to be going against a few freshmen. Some of the forwards in this game are going to be freshmen. The power forward that starts for Illinois is a senior, but most of the other forwards that Illinois is going to be running out there are going to be freshmen. And this is a standpoint where if you think about back to last season when Jaron Stevenson went up against a guy like Ian Shefflin from Clemson, it's very clear if somebody is not as experienced going against somebody much more experienced, think about like a Grant Nelson or a Cliff Amori going up against a freshman that maybe his body is just not fully ready for high-level competition or is not ready for the physicality that they're going to face. I think that they could have some success, right? So I would fully expect that Cliff and Grant could have some success down low in this game. Obviously, I know Illinois is going to try to run Alabama off their three-point line, but this is going to be a situation where I think that Nate and the pace in which we're going to play is going to allow Alabama to get the shots off. The question is Alabama going to be able to make them? I think that obviously being back in a more semi-home environment is going to help. The home crowd should be able to help in this game. Obviously, it's going to be mostly Alabama fans in this one. The question really is, do the shooters show up, right? We talked in the breakdown of the Purdue game that Jaron Stevenson has not hit a three this season, right? For that reason, in my opinion, you have to remove him from the starting lineup. I would put Phylon into the starting lineup, and I would also have Darian Reed in the starting lineup. I would remove Latrell Wrightsell from the starting lineup, and I would have him be more of a bench piece that comes in with Aiden Holloway. I think that they could work off of each other and be able to get shots. But the problem is when Mark Sears is in there with Latrell Wrightsell and Jaron Stevenson, Mark and Grant are really kind of the only ones that can create for themselves. If LeBaron Phylon is in there, he has that ability to create for himself that you just don't get out of Jaron Stevenson or you don't get out of Latrell Wrightsell. Latrell's a great shot maker, but he doesn't get to his shot. Mostly it's spot up shots, either in the corner, kick outs, rhythm threes is where Latrell kind of feasts. He's not as much of a creating a shot for himself, whereas LeBaron has done a much better job of that this season. So, in my opinion, you move LeBaron into the starting lineup, you move Darian Reed into the starting lineup, and I think that gives you a good defensive lineup as well as a good offensive lineup. Alabama really needs Chris Youngblood to be back in this, as soon as possible. I think that sliding him into the three is going to give you the most success, but I think that Darian Reed will give you a defensive option and a different offensive option coming into this game. So, in my opinion, that's what ends up happening. I do think that Alabama can win this game, and I think a big reason why I would take Alabama in this game is that competition jump, right? It's often that when a team faces their first big step up in competition, especially when you have a younger team, and for the most part, this is a much younger team for Illinois. Trey White is a transfer from Louisville and USC, which is pretty good. Kylan Boswell was good at Arizona, which both of those have played some times. This Ben Humerichus, not sure how to say his name. He is a transfer from Evansville. He's a senior, right? So some of these guys do have some minutes in which they play, but a lot of the other guys which get a lot of minutes for Illinois are freshmen. And those freshmen are just facing their first taste into real power conference basketball. And so in my opinion, that's where Alabama's going to have to take advantage and really punch Illinois in the mouth and show them, hey, this is what big-time basketball looks like, and this is where Alabama's going to have some success. So, in my opinion, I think Alabama has success there. I think that Alabama really needs to try to win the glass. Obviously, that's not a crazy thing to say, but Illinois so far this season is top 25 in the country in offensive rebounds. Again, it's against lower level competition, so I wouldn't take that percentage with the validity it currently has. But this is a place where they have been good in the past, and so Alabama is going to have some success in that spot if they're going to win this game. Like I said, I do think Alabama wins this game. I think this is going to be a faster paced game. I would expect it to be in the mid 70s to low 80 possession range. I would look at this game being somewhere in the neighborhood of 85-77 Alabama. Like I said, I do think Alabama wins this game. I think in large part it's due to the step up in competition and Alabama's ability to kind of figure it out at certain moments. I think that Alabama can win this one. I would really look to see a big game out of Grant Nelson or Cliff Omori. Like I said, down low against some younger guys. I think that's a place where they could have a lot of success. And I would definitely look for Alabama to feed them, especially if Illinois is trying to run us off the 3-point line. We saw that at certain moments earlier in the season where teams tried to run us off the 3-point line, and we were able to have some success down low. And I would look to see this game be one of those. So that's what I would look at for this game. I think Alabama does win this one, but it very well could be a very close game. Illinois is a good team. Brad Underwood is a good coach. It's another, tough game in this non-conference slate for Alabama, but I think it is a game which Alabama kind of must win because it doesn't get any easier when it comes to Houston being next on the schedule. So, in my opinion, this is kind of a must-win to keep morale up as you kind of go into the rest of the non-conference. I think you kind of let one slip away from you at Purdue. Not to say it's one that you must have won at Purdue, but I think when you were up 6, you really wanted to win that one. And I think that Illinois is one that you think you can get. So I would look to see Alabama win this game and kind of get some mojo before they go into that tournament. So that's what I look at. If you're interested in the next episode, as I said, it's going to be coming out on Friday. Please subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching, and I will catch you in the next episode. Peace.